I have the outlines on my computer, and I can actually show you, like when I do the Girl Scout day camp. I found one of their badges. This computer's slow. I found one of their badges from another council. And I did something different this year, Nancy. I incorporated a piece in there where the girls ran around the camp and marked coordinates, and they drew maps for me of the camp with the coordinates for like where the snow cone machine was, where the waterfront was. I let the kids pick their spots, and it was really interesting what they picked. So when this comes up, it gave me a really good outline for covering requirements, but it also broke geocaching down at their level for me. It'll come up eventually. So I guess I'm looking for feedback if I would take something like this outline when it comes up and break it more into talking points, if that would be helpful. It's in a DocX, I bet. Sorry. This is an older computer. But pretty much what the badge is, it has requirements. They have to learn about how do GPS receivers work. They have to know about geocaching names. They have to know about the types of caches. They had to do a service project, and that was the run around camp and mark coordinates and draw maps for me. They really got into it. That took most of our time. They had to find cache containers. We had to log on the geocaching website and see how many caches were within a 5-mile radius of the camp, which was really cool because then it brought in the technology piece, which the girls really liked. So, if I could get feedback.
I always found it confusing about the coordinates until it was explained to me in a simple form. Like what's the difference between 4302.375 and 4203.400? How far is that exactly? And that sort of thing. So if you incorporate a little bit of that into a basic course, then that could be a lot. That's kind of helpful.
Okay, so I'll have to paraphrase it so that we explain what the coordinates mean to people. More than I tell them to think of it as a point here and a point there, but to give it more of a definition.
You know, like that would represent 6 feet, or that would represent 100 feet, or that would be a mile.
Okay. Anyone here been asked to teach? Oh.
Tim actually did one at CTC for underprivileged kids that weren't able to, their families weren't able to afford, you know, some of them didn't have computers. And we went out at CTC and we stepped out. I think it was 11 caches, and we did a final. We did a 5-gallon bucket. And him and another guy from the school went around with the kids for they cut it last. They're actually asked to do the work this year.
Cool.
Tony and I have been asked to potentially do something in conjunction with health and wellness group. They're trying to get people out of their offices that move and walk around.
Oh, that'd be neat.
So we'd be thinking about putting some caches out there and actually people doing this without the GPS stuff.
Okay.
So that's, will help your thoughts you have on that.
To get them doing the counting paces and things like that.
Yeah, maybe examples of, you know, a couple. I
And
love
non-technology.
the cache here with your library. And I'm thinking we could probably do something like that with our library, one cache.
Sure.
And do something with the different buildings or counting sidewalks, parcels or something in terms of puzzle caches, but something that they have to get out and walk.
And count and
Look at things.
sure. My day camp outline came out. But this was what I used this last July. So it's, you know, what is geocaching? It's interesting how the kids pronounce it. The GPS, how triangulation works. That's kind of fun when you explain it. The purpose of the campus summers, I had to incorporate more math and science into what I was doing. So that was how I got it in there. Like explaining the coordinates, different containers, talking about the safety aspects. The kids, this worked out really well. So they're going to give me more time next year to do it again. I had 22 girls.
And what did they use for GPS?
I had, the Girl Scout Council just bought 22 E-Trex. Is it 200? The new, it's not the basic one, it was the second model up on E-Trexes. Brand's making a new box, which made it really easy because they're really nice. And I actually think I got every GPS receiver the council owned that day. So I got original E-Trexes and I got the new ones. Guess which ones I used? So it was very fun because I could show the girls, here's how the technology has changed over the years, and we actually fired up both of them. I had the coordinates for the temp caches only in the newer ones, but I let them play with the old ones, play with the new ones, so that they had an understanding of how fast the technology's been changing just in the last couple of years. And they found that real interesting. I also had some Rhino GPS receivers, and we played with those a little bit. We ran out of time, where I let the girls use those to mark the coordinates around camp, and so then they could ping me the coordinates where they were at, which was really kind of neat. They figured out how to make that all work. So, but I didn't know if outlines like this would be helpful to other people, if you're working with kids.
I think actually outlines and all of the potential things would be helpful to anybody who's teaching. You could say, okay, for this group, you don't have to talk about this. You could have a half of a template.
Nancy, what age group would you say these kids are? The ones I deal with, this is the day camp.
12, 13.
Yeah. This is 12, 13-year-olds. And I know if I would teach the same thing for the younger girls, that what I would take out of it, just because it would take too long, because of the time I'm given. I also get the girls the day after their overnight in the afternoon. So they're tired. But this is something they really want to do, and I think that's purposely why they put me when they do, because they want to do it. So they, even though they're on their last thread of keeping it together because they're so exhausted, they participate really well. Just looking for ideas. No.
I just have a question about that. When you do these temporary geocaches, are these something you're actually putting online? And
No, I don't put them online. If I was teaching, and I've actually taught classes before we had this building here or next door, I used the council chambers. I actually hid them around the City Hall building so that I used the building so that when you were at cache number 1, you couldn't see cache number 2. I didn't worry about the proximity as much as I worried about could you see from the next. So if I'm standing at point 1, could I see number 2? And as long as I couldn't see, then I would run around the building that way. So I actually could get like 5 or 6 right here on these grounds, so that I utilized like the pine trees, so I could hang something in the tree, where I could come to the front of the building here by the sign and I could put a magnet on the sign, where I could go around the corner next to the building, because I would do this during off hours, and I wouldn't put anything out until after off hours, so that in case it was found, I'd hide the plastic containers behind the bush. And so then I would have my GPS receivers pre-pro. I used to have people hand enter them. That's a whole fiasco waiting to happen, because it takes, number one, it takes forever, and they get frustrated. Unless you're working with kids, and hand entering the coordinates, I've learned it's much quicker if I preload them. So I'd have the coordinates for all 6 in there. I also number them 1 to 6. So that I would tell you, you're going to start at number 1, you're going to start at number 2, you're going to start at number 3. And I also try to set them up in a loop, so that you're going from 1 to 2, you're going from 2 to 3 to 4. So that way everyone's going around in a circle, so that I can kind of monitor that you're finding everything okay. And having a pre-programmed that, it's just a matter of showing them how to switch between the screens. And that's another thing I learned the hard way, is make sure all your GPSs are set up the same way. Because if they're not, now you're dealing with this one, the accuracy, if their accuracy gets way off, I try to get them all fired up and get all their satellites locked in before I'm handing them out. Something else I learned. Because if you're not, then you're standing around waiting. But that's how I use the temp caches. I try to list the 101 class as an event, and then I encourage them to log the event. But then by hiding them around the perimeter, I had the magnet, I had it hanging, I had one under a tree, I could have an ammo can. So that way they experience all different kinds, all within, reasonable distance, that we're not walking 5 miles and coming back. It was more meant to be a learning experience. And there is one active cache here on the grounds right now. That was put out as part of a puzzle event we did. And at the time, the final was here in this building when it was a library. So we had the event next door. At lunch break, we encouraged people to come and do the puzzle, come in the library, do the final. It worked out really slick. So, but I've just kept the cache live now, even though it's not, the final isn't here anymore. It's over at the new library. I know you said you were at the West Bend event. I use that same presentation when I do the Waukesha with Jamboree. So it's a more of a, just a basic intro, get people on the website, here's what containers you're looking for, here's how to find it, start just to get started. And then I have done longer events where I explain more about how the GPS receivers work, the whole satellite triangulation piece. But what I've been finding is people want to go out and find them more than learn that at the beginning.
Do you cover logging at all?
Yes. And now that I have Wi-Fi on my phone, I actually am able to show that in the class, where before I'd be in locations where I may not necessarily have the Wi-Fi, so I would use screenshots just to kind of pretend I was doing it. I also, in my presentation, try to encourage them to create an account. It's really helpful that the accounts are free, because you can get people, when we were, I think if you were there, Rob, when we were at Pike Lake this summer, we actually had a family sit there with their iPhone that created an account that logged the event right away that day while they were standing there with us, and then they went and logged to the cache that's right there in the Travel Book Hotel. So that was really cool.
You had a family go to Matt.
That's right.
They bought a GPS, they came back, and then they had us teach them how to use the GPS.
Which I think is really cool, because you know that they really want to do it. I'm also asked a lot of times, what type of GPS receiver should I buy? And I think it probably comes from my Red Cross world, where I try not to recommend products. Although I always tell them that I do use a Garmin, but I always encourage them to look at both what's out there, because they both have comparable products now. So, and at Park and Rec, I do have some Magellans and I do have some Garmins, although we haven't been using the Magellans because they're the 210s and they're really hard to figure out. They're new. What?
They suck.
They're really hard to figure out. I'm being nice. I have to say, I do like the newer Magellan. Did you see? That as a new person picking that up, it's very user-friendly. And I guess I try to want people's first experience to be a positive one, so that they can figure it out, how to use the GPS receiver. Because to me, that's like a key piece of it, is if they can figure out how this one works today, can they transfer that so that the one that they're going to be using, they can figure out?
Have you used it before?
I haven't used it to let them know. So I guess if I would get like this outline, the day camp one, I could take the Girl Scout references off of it, get that outline, put on the resources, and update my Geo 101 so that there's a couple little oopses when I went through it last time, like, whoa, okay, just kind of skim over that. I talked about like the 8 cache that isn't there anymore, and a couple things like that that are a little outdated now. If I get those updated and get those on the website, would that be helpful?